Welcome. Welcome to our Tuesday night science call. My name is Shannon Davis. I am a dietitian. I live here in Atlanta, Georgia, and my passion is metabolic health. So I'm so excited for all of you tonight. We are going to be talking about the brain and metabolism, as well as a natural protocol that I was introduced to 3 years ago. So I've worked in organ transplant. I did liver, kidney, and pancreas transplant. I've worked in bariatrics, and I have done the majority of my career in nephrology. So as a dietitian in a dialysis clinic. And then I spent a small stint in pharmaceutical sales. In 2022, I was introduced to something called the Feel Great system. Many of you may know what this is. You're going to learn about it tonight by my dear best friend who's a nurse and diabetes educator. And if I can just tell you this, my life has been profoundly changed since then. If I add up all of the years prior to 2022, and I've been doing this for some time since 2006. I have seen more healing in the last 3 years than the entire previous 16 years of my career. And that's profound. And that is without pharmaceuticals. That is with natural options. So I'm so excited for y'all to hear what we have in store tonight. We're going to show y'all what this is. We're going to talk a little bit about brain health. Did you know that your brain health was related to your metabolism and vice versa? And then we're going to let y'all ask questions. So before we get started, I want to bring in someone that I have gotten to know and respect so much. Her name's Megan Groth. She probably got introduced to this natural protocol about the same time as I have, but she's had quite a profound experience. Since we're going to be talking about brain health, I thought she'd be the perfect person to bring in and give her testimonial about how her life has changed. So, Megan?
Hey, thanks, Shannon. Yeah, so I know a lot of times people have really great results with losing like 100 pounds, and who doesn't want to lose 100 pounds? But I can tell you, losing your mind is much worse than being overweight. And so, me being able to gain my brain back has been priceless. So, I was following the exact same path that my mom was on. My mom at 55 got Alzheimer's and she was fit. She worked out, much like I always show Shannon's before picture. She's what everyone wants to look like after, and this is her before, right? My mom worked out every day. She was healthy, ate whole foods. There was no reason for her to have Alzheimer's. And so that was sent me down a spiral of trying to figure out how she got this. We were just assuming it's genetic at the time. And now we understand a little bit more about Alzheimer's and brain health and the link with metabolic health. And so for her, she absolutely had psoriasis and she had all the other warning signs of insulin resistance. She didn't have a weight problem though. And so at 50, I was in the same exact place that she was. I had brain fog and not just a little. I had the preclinical Alzheimer's symptoms. We had spent $50,000 on an insurance program because we knew in a few years I would need some care. And we watched this devastate my dad financially, right? Just completely, they take every penny you have, they'll leave you a house and one car. And so I
Wow.
would have to write myself notes in the kitchen to where I was going because I would be back in 30 seconds. What was I doing? And then, oh, right, you're getting the scissors. Okay, walk, 100 feet to get the scissors. And doing this all day long. Would forget what I was talking about midstream. All the signs that life is not going to be going the direction I want it to go. And so I just resigned myself to that fact that that was just part of it. And when I did this system, I had no clue that it was going to help my brain health. I was hoping it would lower inflammation, get rid of the plantar fasciitis and things like that that I was dealing with. But I was shocked and really saddened that something so simple, right, could have saved my mom's life. But we didn't know it at the time. That was 25 years ago. And so for me, I don't have any memory issues. I can remember pretty much everything. So all of my brain fog, all of the preclinical Alzheimer's symptoms completely gone, and I have my brain back, which is worth more than any amount of weight loss.
That's amazing. And one thing too, Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, you suffered from pretty severe migraines as
Yes,
well.
yeah. Which I had no idea that was connected to this either. I had migraines. I'd be in bed every other week for 2 days, where I would be vomiting in a dark room, and that was just normal. I had migraines since second grade, so I just since 9 years old. I mean, that's crazy, right? Never once did a doctor ever tell me that could be any relation at all to my metabolic health. I mean, I was hypoglycemic. I was told, not only are you hypoglycemic, but eventually you're probably going to be a type 2 diabetic. And no connection was ever made with any of these things. So I have not had one migraine since starting the system, not one headache. It will be 3 years at Thanksgiving and
Wow.
not one migraine.
And you're not on migraine medication.
No, I am on zero meds now.
That's amazing. Wow. Wow. Well, what an amazing story. And, I'm just so blessed that you were introduced to it. And I hope some others on here will, this will ring a bell. They may think of somebody in their friends network or their family that are showing the same symptoms that you mentioned, and maybe this could be something that could help them too. So thank you for sharing your story, for being vulnerable, and for saving people's lives.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, guys. Well, Megan's story is pretty profound. You're going to hear some more stories. You're going to see other people's testimonial tonight about how this system, and we're going to talk about this system. So if you're like, what do these people keep talking about this system? I'm going to go over it after I bring on our guest. So our next guest is Dr. Eric Akin. He is a neurosurgeon out of Arkansas. And so who better to talk about a brain than somebody who actually sees it and touches it and feels it every day. So, guys, welcome Dr. Eric Akin. Eric, thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for having me on, Shannon. And so this evening, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how your metabolism actually affects your brain performance. And so if you notice that you more frequently forget where your keys are, you put something there, or you plan to put some socks on, you take them into the kitchen with you, and then you go have to do something else. So you walk out of the room, you come back, you cannot figure out where your socks are. They're on the counter in the kitchen. Or you have difficulty responding to someone when they ask you, a question in a conversation. You know what you want to say, but it takes a few seconds. Like there's this sort of a stutter in your thinking before you actually start talking. You can't get the thought going. Or you have trouble because when you're reading something a little technical and you have to keep rereading the same paragraph to get it down, you can't seem to hold your focus long enough to get it down. I'm just naming a few examples of how this shows up. Now, if this happens once in a blue moon, it doesn't mean that you're headed to the old folks' home immediately, but it's a sign, if it's happening a lot, that your brain function is compromised. Here's another one, that you get frustrated when you have to change plans, like Thanksgiving plans. And the more frustrated you are in changing those plans, probably is a reflection of how compromised your brain metabolism is. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how this happens. What does your metabolism do to compromise your brain, and some things that you can do to fix it. So I'm going to share my screen here. By the way, this is an entirely AI generated graphic presentation here. It's the first time I've ever tried this. We'll see what it's like. So, okay, and now if it will let me now. So what is metabolism? It's just the system of taking in food, digesting it, releasing the energy from that food, and then in particular, we're going to talk about its interaction with providing your brain with fuel. So first, I want to introduce you to the mitochondria. Some of you might remember from, I don't know what year I learned it. Maybe it was 8th grade. that this part of your cells, it's called the mitochondria. And the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cells, the way we always called it. But it's that place in your cells, when you eat food, you can't just use the energy that's in the food. You have to process it. It's sort of like, think of it as like a fuel refinery, uh, a, a fossil fuel refinery. When they pull that oil out of the ground, you can't just put it in your car and burn it and run it. You have to process that fuel to a form that your car can actually use. And that's what the mitochondria does for all the cells in your body, and in particular, your brain. Your brain actually has a bit more mitochondria than other cells do because, well, your brain consumes a lot of energy. It needs a lot of energy. So if they become compromised, if they get gummed up, then the effects start becoming immediately noticeable. In fact, your thinking may be the first sign that you have metabolic syndrome, this syndrome in which you're getting metabolically sick. And it doesn't uh, jump up on you all at once. It's not like, for example, cancer, where you start losing weight pretty rapidly and you start feeling sick and it's pretty obvious something's going on. This is something that creeps up over decades sometimes. And then it can reach this critical mass and you're in big trouble. So how it gets gummed up, first of all, is that you consume too much sugar and too much, in particular, fructose and glucose, this combination. And if you are overloading that refinery with fuel, then it gets gummed up and it can't really process the fuel. You've got too much oil there. It's spilling all over the floor. It's getting all over the machinery and it's backing things up. So no fuel is being made eventually. What that leads to in your brain, and I'll show you the results of that here toward the end, but if your brain cells stop receiving the energy they need, they go into a programmed cell death. We call it apoptosis. But think of it as like a shutdown sequence that starts uh, once they are compromised enough, where they're not getting enough energy for too long. Another thing that happens, though, as this factory starts getting backed up and overloaded with too much, crude oil, we're going to call it, then that crude oil starts, getting on the machinery. It starts throwing sparks. Those sparks can cause damage. In this case, the sparks are something called superoxides. They create these byproducts that are very toxic. Think of it as almost like fire. And when fire touches things, it burns it, it damages it, and it causes problems. So as you start gumming up the mitochondria, it starts throwing sparks, and this causes damage to the surrounding cells and not just the cell that's involved in this process. So there's another issue that happens. Your brain actually has like a janitor system in it. It's its own immune system. We call them microglia. They always have to name things different when it comes to the nervous system. These cells have a different name in your peripheral blood system, but in your brain, they are specialized cells called the microglia, and they act to help to protect your brain. If you get infected with a virus, for example, it'll be the microglia that help bottle up those viruses and getting them out of the system. They also help, though, to clean out damaged parts to the cells in your brain. So if those microglia stop functioning properly, it's like the janitor went on vacation. The building starts to get cluttered and things aren't looking so great. Things start getting dirty and things stop functioning so well. So those microglia will start to get compromised, as well as the neurons in your brain themselves. Now, there is a system that your brain uses in order to learn things, and we call it Hebbian learning. And the saying is, neurons that fire together wire together. So, for example, if you're trying to learn how to hit a backhand on the tennis court, well, as you swing that racket, you're going to watch it hit the ball and you're going to see where the ball goes. And every time you do that, your brain is firing these neurons. When you get it right, when you hit the ball where you wanted it to go, you'll get a little bit bigger response and you start to see these neurons starting to make connections with each other. The more they start firing, they start learning and they start doubling down on the patterns that work right. So no matter whether it's you're trying to learn how to hit a backhand or learning how to do some public speaking or learning anything, the more that you repeat that activity, those neurons will start to wire together so that it becomes more efficient and a louder signal. But if those neurons are compromised, they're not getting enough energy because your mitochondria are backed up. Well, then the Hebbian learning process is hampered. It's harder for you to learn things. It's harder for you to adapt. One practical example of this, a new boss comes onto the scene at work and they want to change a few systems, the way you guys do things. And it's not intuitive the way that the new way that they want you to do it, it's not intuitive. And it's taking you a lot longer to learn the new system than everybody else because your Hebbian learning is compromised. It's harder for you to form those new connections. Now, the glymphatic system is also, it's sort of the lymph system. It's what carries waste out of the brain. This is a system that works primarily at night when you're sleeping. And that whole system also gets malfunctioned whenever you have metabolic syndrome, whenever you have this mitochondrial dysfunction. And so your brain produces byproducts of metabolism, that's the waste, but it needs to get rid of it or else those things can become toxic to your brain. And they get rid of it at night and while you're sleeping. And that system, what we call the glymphatic system, doesn't work so well. It becomes backed up and you have more toxic waste in your brain as this goes on. You get more white matter wear and tear. I'm going to show you this later. So there's the gray matter, which is where the impulses start, but the white matter is sort of like the telephone line that conveys the message. You will start to see problems with the white matter and its ability to conduct an electrical impulse. This is why when I mentioned earlier about slowed thinking, when somebody asks you a question, it takes you like this little moment to kind of register what they said to you and then to come up with an answer. And you notice that this is starting to become a routine. It's because of the compromise of the white matter in your brain. It just simply can't conduct the impulses. We already talked about microglia. So this shutdown sequence, it starts with too much sugar and then it leads to high insulin levels. These high insulin levels will then turn on the super oxides and these sort of electrical sparks I was telling you about. They will cause the rust, what we're going to call the rust with this, refinery analogy. And basically this ends up shutting down the power to your brain. So how can you fix this? How can you speed up your thinking, improve your mental, your cognitive flexibility and your reaction times and everything else that you need to, would enjoy having, like you did when you were 15. By the way, when you're 15 is the fastest your brain will ever work. Your IQ is actually at the highest it will ever be at age 15. It's all downhill from there. Sorry to tell you that. But that said, it's a slow decline. So don't worry, it lasts for a while. But the first bit of how to reverse this whole situation, and it is very reversible, is that you take periods of time that you don't eat. When you don't eat, a fasting window, and it counts when you're asleep. So that time you spend asleep is part of that fasting window. That allows those factories to catch up. They can then begin to process the fuel again. The insulin levels come down, which turns off the superoxides. That's those sparks I was telling you about. So the sparks stop flying and you start to see your brain sort of catching up and starting to make energy again. The second thing you can do is eat the real food first. And what's in the ultra processed foods. And if you don't know what ultra processed food is, you might think you do, but you'd be surprised the way we define what processed food is, what ultra processed food is. I encourage you to just Google that a little bit and learn a bit about what constitutes ultra processed foods. But what's in those ultra processed foods, number one, is a lot of sugar, but for many of them. And then there's some other things that are in there that actually can be directly toxic to your mitochondria. So the more that you eat them, the more that you compromise your brain function. So instead, go for the eggs and the fish and all of that stuff rather than the Cheetos and the cereals. The third part of the fix is to move your muscles more. Now, I had a picture on here and it didn't fix it. So that's the AI, not me, not my problem. So I'll make it do it the next time. But it did have this nice picture of a muscle with sugar going into it. Imagine, if you will. And your muscles are the biggest sugar sink that you've got in your body. So the more that you eat sugar, the more that the more that you build your muscles, the more that you can take care of that sugar, give it a place to go. Let me make sure that I'm not going overtime. Am I overtime, by the way? Am I good? Okay, I got a few more minutes. I'm almost done. Okay. So the last thing that you can do, and by the way, when you're over the age of 40, 50, you start losing muscle unless you do something about it. And there are ways to actually build muscle pretty efficiently. We've learned a lot about that, even in your 50s and 60s and 70s. And when you get into your 80s, well, it gets a bit hard at that point. Everything gets hard. But keep your muscle up, do the resistance training, and the muscle is important. And ladies, don't think that you're going to get too buff. You're really not. Men have a hard enough time trying to get buff, even without using steroids. So it's not going to happen. Now, the last part is getting enough sleep. Whenever you get sleep, your cortisol is this thing. It's the cortisol sequence in your brain. What cortisol is a stress hormone. But if you mess that stress hormone up, if it starts being too high too late in the day, one thing it does is it makes you more insulin resistant. So your insulin levels start going up, and it will affect how your body processes sugar. And again, it'll start making those sparks fly in your brain. And it sort of wreaks havoc on a lot of the tissues in your body. The sequence starts in your head, in a gland attached to your brain, at the pituitary gland. And it's a circadian rhythm. So it happens at about 4 in the morning. This little gland, the pituitary, starts putting out this peptide that eventually makes its way down to your adrenal glands, and your adrenal glands start making cortisol. It's supposed to happen early in the morning, a high, peak, and then it drifts down over the course of your day. It's preparing you for the stress of the day. But if you lose sleep, if you do the revenge sleep procrastination, trying to get your me time in at 2 a.m. And finish off that Netflix show that you really wanted to see the end to, what that's doing, it's going to cause you to have a higher cortisol level toward the end of your day when you want it to actually be winding down. And that cortisol will make you hungrier. It's going to make you crave sugar. It's going to make you basically beat up those mitochondria in your brain. And so you want to get enough sleep and get that exposure to sunlight, an adequate amount of exposure to sunlight. So a quick recap: the power plants need steady fuel and breaks from that fuel, particularly the sugar. You got to keep that clubhouse. That was another slide that I wanted to put in, but the AI somehow forgot it. But basically, you have a blood-brain barrier that gets compromised as well. And it's your brain is in a very privileged space. Nothing's supposed to get in there, but that gets leaky when you start eating too much sugar, and that makes your brain exposed to a lot of toxic things, causing inflammation. The cleanup system gets janky at night if you are insulin resistant. And then finally, you want to protect the cables, the white matter, which conducts all those impulses coming from your gray matter, so that those thoughts go quickly, that you become more mentally flexible. And finally, the immune system in your brain, its own specific immune system, will work much better whenever you do these things and get your metabolism back under control. One last little thing I want to show you before I go. Hopefully you can see this. Can you see two brains there? Okay, so this is an image right here of a normal brain on the left. This is a person who's been eating too much sugar. And I want to point something out right here. You see these big gaps? That's lost brain here. This is what we call the insular cortex, the temporal lobe here, and the frontal lobe. And there's been lost tissue. Look how thin that's supposed to be here. That's supposed to be a thin little sliver. Instead, they got these big open holes here. This is loss of frontal lobes because of that. I told you, when those mitochondria get gummed up and it can't make fuel for these cells, it goes into a shutdown sequence called apoptosis. You start losing brain volume. It's a big problem. Look at that. Look at that. It looks like somebody gave this frontal lobe a haircut right there. It's gone. You don't want your brain to look like this. You want it to be full, like packed in there. Big, beautiful brains so that you can do all the thinking that you need to do. All right, that's it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Akin. And we will bring you back on after I do my little spiel over this protocol that we've been speaking so amazingly on, and let you answer some questions that are in the chat. A couple things, guys, that I wanted to touch on that Dr. Eric mentioned. Did you know that one night of poor sleep can increase insulin resistance by 25%? One night. So that's one thing. Another thing that's really cool is there's this tea that I'm going to talk about that is part of this protocol that contains a compound called chlorogenic acid. And chlorogenic acid does some pretty neat things. And one of the things that it does is it talks to the myglobia, which Dr. Eric talked about in your brain. So the chlorogenic acid activates a pathway that's called an NRF2 pathway that protects your brain. So this is pretty profound, and there are research studies and reports that have been done to show this. So the heart can communicate with the brain when you have plaque. So for those of you that are worried about having a cardiac event or a heart attack due to blockages from a plaque, believe it or not, that plaque sends messengers to your brain, and chlorogenic acid that's in this amazing tea that we drink turns on a pathway that blocks that. So it's protecting your brain. So we're going to learn a little bit about what this protocol is now. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go through this. If you have questions, save it for the end. And let me get my screen in full screen mode. Can we see this? Is everybody good? Okay. All right. So it's called the Feel Great system. And I know that sounds like a kind of a cheesy name, but truly you will feel great. And for those of you that are on it, can vouch for that. And while we're talking about that, if you have been on this protocol that I'm about to speak to, why don't you put in the comments what it has done for you? Has it made you feel great? For me, myself, like I mentioned earlier, I've been on it now for 3 years. As a dietitian, I was a bit skeptical in the beginning because I just heard about all the amazing things that it did, but was not quite sure how I could get benefit from it. I haven't had a weight problem. I haven't had a blood pressure problem. I like to work out. I want more muscle, like Dr. Eric was talking about. But you know, just like Megan, she was fit, her mom was fit, some things were going on the inside that we didn't know about. And I had a terrible lipid problem. My triglycerides, guys, were through the roof. We want our triglycerides under 100, and mine were at 250. And as a dietitian, I was pretty embarrassed to admit that because I'm supposed to be the great example of good health, and I'm walking around with triglycerides through the roof written on my forehead. But I want you to know, after 8 weeks of being on this protocol that I'm about to teach you about, 8 weeks, my triglycerides went from 250 down to 50. Okay. So it's pretty profound. Okay. When we talk about, I mentioned that you can get you can increase your insulin resistance by 25% from having one night of poor sleep. Well, what is insulin resistance? I want y'all to look at this list right here and put in the comments how many of these things on here are something that you can recognize about yourself, or a family or a loved one. You know, it's not just obesity. That's the easy one. Type 2 diabetes is the other, you know, easy symptom. But we often don't talk about neuropathy or cancer. Men certainly don't want to talk about erectile dysfunction. Women, PCOS, the number one cause of infertility in women, PCOS. Guys, this is an insulin metabolic problem. Fatty liver. I want you to know that about 99% of the livers that we transplanted were from fatty liver. It was called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD. Now it's called metabolic associated fatty liver disease. We have a big problem in children now are developing fatty liver. Heart disease. Do y'all know what the number one cause of heart disease? It's still the number one cause of death, but what's the number one cause of heart disease? Type 2 diabetes. Do you see a trend? High blood pressure. High blood pressure is not a salt problem. It can be in a small population, but for the majority, it's an insulin problem. Alzheimer's. You heard Megan's testimonial. It's often called type 3 diabetes. Migraines. You heard Megan's story, right? Gout, skin tags. Ever seen somebody who looks like the back of their neck is dirty? It's not dirt. It's darkened skin pigmentation due to insulin resistance. Okay. All right. So how do we get this? Well, unfortunately, and I mean this in all respect, y'all, please know that we kind of do it to ourselves. We eat ourselves sick. And it's not because we're weak or undisciplined or a lack of willpower. It's because of the food system has been created to cause us to become addicted, right? There is no coincidence that we can't eat just one. And I am a food expert and I can chow down with the best of you. Okay. So it is not, it is not a personal thing. It is a hormonal thing, right? We get up, we've been told, and I'm so sorry as a dietitian, I probably instigated a lot of this because I insisted that you eat when you wake up and you eat every 2 to 3 hours. And boy, was I wrong. I didn't know what I didn't know. And the wool was pulled over my eyes. But it's not now. And we know better. And what we know better is that we don't need to eat every 2 to 3 hours. Bet you can't guess where that came from, right? The snack food industry. So you get up, you eat, you have a snack, it's time for lunch. Guess what? You get to eat again. You have a snack, you eat again, dinner, and we all need dessert, right? Because we've worked really hard and we've earned it. But that's not even, that's just half of the picture. The other half is what are we eating during these times? How many of y'all have ever ate like 10 apples in one setting? Probably no one, right? It's because those apples, yes, it contains sugar. Yes, it has fructose, but it also has fiber. Fiber is an amazing component. If we eat foods that are high in fiber, you're going to get full kind of fast. You're going to stay full for much longer. So the brilliant food scientists and the snack food industries figured out if we remove that very important component, people keep eating, they stay hungry, the food tastes better, and it lasts a long time on the shelf. Okay. So how do we combat this problem? Well, we bring the fiber back. But in a perfect world, how many of y'all eat a diverse array of fibers in your diet? Very few of us. We don't have time. We don't have the advantage of being exposed to all these different amazing foods. Many of us even don't have the budget to buy all this array of fruits and vegetables, and then it goes bad. So there's an easy fix. I just start my meals with this little pack of fiber. And this isn't Metamucil, y'all. The Cleveland Clinic. How many of y'all have heard of the Cleveland Clinic? It's the top cardiac hospital in the nation. They actually studied this. and said on a population basis, such a product, if taken regularly, could replace lipid lowering meds. What that means in general terms is, hey, this could replace a statin, right? The University of Sydney, they're the founders of the glycemic index. They're the diabetes experts. They studied this. So what does this do? You mix it up. You get a bottle, you've got a line, you fill it to the line. You don't even need to fill it to the line. If you don't want that much, you just need enough liquid to dissolve it. You shake it up, chug, chug. What it's going to do is going to expand in your belly. So it's going to activate the stretch receptors. You're going to get fuller faster and stay fuller longer. Remember me saying my triglycerides went down? That's from this beautiful pack right here. These diverse fibers lower triglycerides, which are the dangerous part of the lipids. Okay, LDL gets blamed, but it's not LDL's fault. It's the triglycerides' fault. But gut health is something that you're going to start to hear about as we move into the future, because it is one of the most important aspects of longevity. If our gut's not healthy, our mind's not healthy. Our gut's the second brain. We can't absorb nutrients properly, right? No one wants diarrhea, constipation, bloating, gas, right? That all has to do with gut health. So this is a prebiotic. It's the food for the bacteria in our gut. Our bacteria are what feeds the fiber. We don't digest the fiber, but it's the food for our gut bacteria. And here's one of the most important things. For those of you who struggle with blood sugar or high glucose, this little pack right here is powerful. It can lower your glucose up to 43%. And for those of you who take metformin, which is the top diabetic drug prescribed in the world, it only lowers glucose 25 to 30%. So this right here actually lowers glucose more than the #1 prescribed diabetic drug. Sounds pretty amazing to me. The second part, y'all remember me speaking of chlorogenic acid, right? In the brain, the microglia, right? This is a chlorogenic acid extract. This is probably one of the most yummy tasting teas I've ever drank in my life. I have to dilute it down so that I don't drink it too fast. But what does it do? Well, chlorogenic acid is a potent insulin sensitizer. So if we're trying to combat insulin resistance, which means our insulin's too high, we want our cells to be sensitive so we don't need as much. So it increases insulin sensitivity. It gives great energy. How many of y'all want more energy? I've never heard someone say, I have too much energy. I don't want more energy. But not because you drink a ton of coffee or 7 energy drinks. Because you drink a very healthy natural tea, you just have energy. How many of y'all have joint pain, inflammation? You ache all the time. Megan mentioned her plantar fasciitis. The most potent anti-inflammatory I've ever seen is in this pack right here. But here's something that many of y'all's ears are going to perk up to. I know everyone on here, there's 370 of us, have heard of GLP-1. It is Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, or Zepbound, right? They're coming out with more of them. Just be prepared. But they are the buzz pharmaceutical because people are claiming to them for weight loss. They do come with their own side effects, okay? But what if our body makes GLP-1. That is the only source of GLP-1, not those injections. That's not a GLP-1. That's a synthetic mimetic. It mimics. Our body, our belly is the only GLP-1. This little pack right here upregulates ours up to 67%. So why not drink something naturally with no side effects that's going to increase your health, increase your own GLP-1, right? It also increases one of the most potent antioxidants in the body called glutathione. Look that up, glutathione. Everybody wants glutathione, trust me. All right, now why is my screen? Oh, there we go. Let me go back. Okay. All right, so I mentioned a little bit about how I drink the balance. So how do we use this protocol? We have 2 amazing natural products. Guys, I tell people this all the time. Do y'all remember when wheatgrass was on the market or the big to do? Everybody was shooting wheatgrass shots, and we're like, oh my God, it's so healthy. We have to do it. I can remember, I think I got through about 5 days of wheatgrass shots before I literally was like, gagging in my mouth. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I don't care how healthy this is. There is no more wheatgrass shots. I'm done. I'm done. So remember that. Now, how many of y'all seen the infomercials of beautiful Christy Brinkley? Like she's just, I don't know how old she is right now, but she's stunning. I mean, yes, she's stunning. I still think of the Chevy Chase movies. Wasn't she the one in the Chevy Chase National Lampoon's movies? I mean, that's anyway. So she sells her skincare regimen, and I'm like, I really should buy this because I want to look like her. But it's like 10 steps. There's no way I'm doing a 10-step system every morning, every night. It's all I can do to get my teeth brushed and flossed. Like we're not complicating things anymore. So I bring these two things up. Why? Because for anything to be beneficial and work, we have to be consistent at it. It has to be easy and it has to taste good. Okay. So that is what you have right here. You have something that is very easy. All you need is an empty bottle or a water bottle, and you need your packets. And I've traveled to Asia with them. I've traveled to Hawaii, to the Dominican. They travel, they're easy. You wake up in the morning, you take your tea. Now, some people may like their hot cup of tea and sip it. I don't. I'm not a hot cup of tea person. I'm a big mug, big jug of water person. So I mix mine up in 40 ounces. From the time I get up, it goes with me to the gym. I sip on it, and I'm usually done about 9 a.m. And if I want my cup of coffee, I have it. But I just drink coffee because I like it. It's decaf. All right. And then I have lunch. I normally do 2 of these a day, so I have one of these mixed up in just enough water, chug chug, and I eat a lunch that's animal-based protein heavy with some vegetables sprinkled around it. I drink another one in the afternoon. How many of y'all feel a little tired in the afternoon or a little munchy? If you drink this, it takes care of both of those. And then I have this before my dinner. Same thing, big animal-based protein meal, some veggies sprinkled around it. I call it a day. And if y'all can do that, then you're going to see many, many changes in your health. You just notice that you don't feel the need to snack. You notice that your appetite feels like it's more controlled. You notice that your inflammation, I hear people say, my pants just fit better. Or I look at myself in the mirror and I look less puffy. I don't ache anymore. My feet don't burn. All of these things. I had my blood work done and I was blown away. So with that being said, we have so many testimonials. I'm going to pull up the chat. I think we probably got some going in the chat. I have to wait till I'm not sharing my, okay. Let's see. Oh my gosh, guys. I'm trying to get the chat to see if I can see. No more brain fog, clean energy, skin tags are gone. Hypoglycemic, now I'm not. No longer, let's see, hardly have no pain. I've been on the system. Chronic inflammatory bowel disease gone, inflammation gone. A year and a half, I'm down over 80 pounds, off vertigo and inflammation meds, depression gone. Okay, off all meds, going on 2 years. A1C went from 7.7 to 6.4. Energy's increasing. I'm still trying to follow. Let's see. Pain-free, no more migraines after 10 years of suffering. No more neuropathy. Suffered for 7 years. No more inflammation. Rheumatoid arthritis gone. Inflammation gone. Okay. So guys, we could keep going. I'm going to close off the chats. I'm going to bring Dr. Eric back on here. And if y'all have questions, we're going to ask. Put them in the chat. We can ask now. And then if this is something that you are not on and you are interested in trying, Like I said, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I will never stop taking it because I don't want to be sick and I love the way that it makes me feel. Then reach out to the person that invited you to this call and they can share a discount link with you. Um, type ones, I'm going to start answering the question. Eric, are you able to hop on?
Yeah, I'm
Um,
here. Can you see me?
okay, I can see you. Someone asked, let's see. I just saw a question for you. Are metabolic brain issues similar to what happens in the case of a stroke or migraine that temporarily causes speech issues? In either of these cases, could they be caused by insulin resistance?
So strokes are definitely caused or contributed to by insulin resistance. It's a little different though. A stroke, where you got some blockage of the artery that's feeding a part of the brain, that's damage to a blood vessel. The inner lining of a blood vessel is, and I mentioned before, these superoxides. Those superoxides will then, they'll think of it like this: they light your cholesterol on fire. So now you've got flaming cholesterol that's going down, cooking the inner parts of your arteries, making them more prone to form clots and plaques. And when one of them finally becomes totally blocked off, then that's when a stroke happens. So, it does it in several ways, but it's not internal to the brain, but it's external. It's from the effect on your blood vessels.
Okay.
Um,
Another one, Eric. Could this be helpful for someone with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or
it could,
POTS?
if they're experiencing already a lot of inflammation on account of Ehlers-Danlos, then it can be helpful in that way. Will it reverse the condition? No, that's a a connective tissue issue, but it can at least, you don't want to add insult to injury, right? So this can help to prevent that.
Okay, let's see. Um, okay. What about brain aneurysms? They just said, what about brain aneurysms?
So brain aneurysms have a modest genetic component to them. Now, smoking and having a sort of uncontrolled hypertension may also be a risk factor with that. So if you are someone who has a genetic predisposition, and a lot of people have aneurysms and don't really know about it, but what turns an aneurysm into a small aneurysm into a big aneurysm is having uncontrolled hypertension for a long period of time, and it can cause ultimately the rupture of the aneurysm. So, uh, by the way, if you have anyone that's had a first degree relative who's ever died of an aneurysm, you should probably be getting surveilled for aneurysms about once every 10 years. It's
Okay.
usually with an MRI.
Okay. I will answer this. Can this help someone with Crohn's? Yes. Crohn's is an inflammatory
Oh yeah.
process. Yes, we've seen many people get better with Crohn's. Kids with ADD, yes, I personally have had many kids, parents reach out to me whose kids have ADD, ADHD, and are doing very, very well using the Unimate in the morning before school. We do have a few studies on how it helps with mood and focus. So absolutely. Seizures, Eric, I can let you talk about that for a second, but I'll say, if they're epileptic seizures, you definitely want to institute a ketogenic diet.
Oh yeah.
That was the number one go-to before all these medications came out. And I would definitely, definitely do a ketogenic diet first.
Yeah. Your inability, if you have an inability to abstain from overeating carbohydrates, keeping yourself in a non-ketogenic state, your brain is never really getting ketones. Your brain can only use two forms of fuel, ketones and glucose. And ketones are extremely calming to those abnormal electrical activities that go on to spark a seizure to happen. So people who have epilepsy can see a remarkable control of their seizure activity when their brain gets exposure to more ketones. So, but that's hard to do if you got metabolic syndrome. You want to reverse that so that you can begin to create some ketones for your brain.
Okay. Somebody asked, what about autism?
In what regard?
It just says, what about autism?
Well, autism, by the time you've got it, I mean, you're still in utero. And you know, I think I don't know that there's a connection between mothers having metabolic syndrome and more higher frequency of autism. It seems one thing I know that's more related to is age, rather the age of the mother and the father at the time. But I don't know that it would have now people who are autistic may have some issues that uh, I can't really say that autism by itself this is going to be a field that this is going to be a great benefit for.
Right, right. Someone asked the question about brittle diabetes. I will chime in and say,
Yeah.
um, brittle diabetes, again, the most important thing about diabetes is diet. Diabetes is a disease of carbohydrate intolerance. If we're talking about type 2, of carbohydrate toxicity and insulin resistance. So if we remove the causative agent, which is the sugar and the carbohydrate, then we're going to be able to handle better controlling the glucose. Because what happens with brittle diabetes is you get your high spikes, you treat them with medication or insulin, which is going to then bottom you out. So then you eat some more sugar to bring it back up, and it creates this what we call the blood sugar roller coaster. So if we can focus mainly on proteins, fiber, and fat, these are the nutrients that are going to cause less of a glucose response, which means you have to quit. You don't have to chase your highs and lows so much. And then if we can eat less often, then we're going to start being able to resensitize ourselves to insulin again. So it's going to be a process. Again, I cannot reiterate, if you have profound metabolic disease, changing your food is by far the best thing that you can do. And using some tools like the Feel Great system in conjunction with the diet. These are dietary diseases. Insulin and metformin and statins and blood pressure meds are band-aids. They are making numbers look pretty. And if you don't understand what I mean, you remove that medicine and you still have diabetes. You still have high blood pressure. Okay, you still have these things because we have to treat them. The root cause is the insulin resistance, and we treat that by removing the causative agent, adding some natural tools, and focusing on nutrition, fiber, fat, and protein. Okay. We're going to answer one or two more questions, and then we are going to call it a night. Eric, I'm going to leave this one to you. What about a cancer patient who does chemotherapy?
And in regard to what? Like like
That's it.
okay. So if someone is on chemotherapy, it, it, I, one of the things that, the best way to grow cancer is with sugar, eating a lot of sugar. If someone who is on chemotherapy, who has cancer, is trying to slow that progression, then or to put it in remission, their best odds would be to be able to adopt a lower carbohydrate intake diet. A ketogenic diet actually would be extremely beneficial in that scenario. If they're having trouble breaking up with the carbs and the sugar, then the Feel Great system is going to be a huge benefit to you to be able to do that.
Okay.
So in that regard, yes.
Awesome.
I can't say this, to be clear, this product does not cure cancer, but what it can do is set you up metabolically for your best odds for a remission if it's the type of cancer that can be put in remission with chemotherapy.
Yep. And guys, autophagy is a very strong component of that. That's the self cleaning. And so, all right, there is one more. How many teas are okay to drink? There really isn't a
Limit.
limit. you just go with what feels good to you. I know on days when I travel or I'm fasting longer, I drink more. Typically I do 2 to 3 a day, but I have done much more than that. With that being said, guys, thank you all so much for joining. If you have a friend or loved one that has brain cognitive impairment and could benefit from this, please reach out. We'd love to share this video with them. If you or someone you know could benefit from using some natural tools like the Feel Great system, reach out to the person who invited you to this call. We are here to help you. We are here to support you. We thank you so much for joining, and y'all have an amazing week.